I'm not a huge believer in the many worlds theory, but sometimes I like to talk about it as if I, you know, believe it, believe in it rather strongly. And that's what I'm going to do today. So, there was a timeline where I lost my where I lost the Sun and Moon match of my round one home field match. I could have phrased that better, but um, so there was a timeline that I took Amy to DPP, right? And after our match, Amy showed me the team that he would have brought to DPP. And, anyone who saw who the fuck am I kidding? In round one, I did get a little bit lucky. I got some good fortune. Nothing too crazy. But, it did swing to me a bit. The favor of the game. So, this is what Amy would have brought to me. Full baton pass, and I do not care anymore about how lucky I got. I don't feel bad at all, and it is just justice that I happen to, get the fortune I needed to win 2-0. Again, I don't think the luck was that huge, but Amy thinks otherwise. I suppose it's easy to say that when you were on the receiving end of it, but personally, I didn't think it was that crazy. But yeah. Fuck that. Don't feel bad at all. Eat eggs. So, there's some closure for that set. So, today, I just got done playing my round 2 match. And it was against a person named MemeDose46, who I didn't know much about before this tournament. So I did a bit of scouting, right? Because I kind of wanted to see who this guy was, there aren't any, it's not a replay required tournament, so nobody had been posting replays, so I kind of had to go back a bit and see, okay, what kind of teams does he like bringing, what's his play style, kind of, just so I can feel out, roughly what to expect as far as his game goes. Obviously that doesn't have, full bearing on how my match went, but it was going to give me a good idea as to what I was getting myself into. And this guy, he's a bit of a tournament spammer. He signs up for a lot of tournaments for metagames that he's not really super involved in, doesn't have a lot of stake in, and certainly isn't terribly experienced in. He was signing up for all these old gens, these lower tiers, other metagames, but it seemed like he was pretty well known because he was getting into some smaller Premier Leagues. I think he got into like Monotype Premier League or something like that. So I could tell he was a good player. So I kind of was skimming through some of the tournaments he'd been in, looking for replays that I could use. And he has a custom avatar. So I guess you play enough tournaments, you get a custom avatar eventually, right? But he made it to round 2 off of a bye because there were 88 people who entered the tournament, and not everyone could be paired up. I think I don't remember exactly how does that work out. I guess it makes more sense if you look at it in terms of a bracket, but if you do some digging through the forums, you'll see what I mean. But yeah, so he got a bye, And I also noticed he took a lot of activity wins. So I was kind of questioning, is this guy that good? I mean, not to downplay my opponent. I don't like doing that, ever. Um, I don't like getting comfortable with like, this guy's whatever, right? I gotta be. I always have to be at my best, but this seemed kind of strange. He's a tournament spammer who gets a lot of activity wins, and he has a custom avatar, and it seemed like he had some good connections as well. So I was interested to see how he would perform. A couple of things to note as well are that he chose Gen 8 Ubers as his home field, which is interesting to me because, generally when someone chooses Gen 8, you can assume two things. Either one, they're not as strong in the old gens, which is something you can typically take advantage of, or two, they just pick whatever the last generation was because they played it when it was current and they remember it pretty strongly for that reason. I didn't know which of the two would apply to his case, but that's something I had to keep in mind. If I took him to DPP, I felt pretty confident that I could win, as opposed to someone who's very experienced in the Uber circuit scene, who has had to play a lot of old generations and as such would have been better at DPP Ubers. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking going into this. So those were a lot of the preliminary thoughts. I don't believe there's anything I'm missing. So the team I brought is this one. I brought this again because, again, replays weren't required, so it's not like, I bring this team and the guy's thinking like, oh, I have open team sheet. This is what the guy brought last time. Because, a big part of tournaments where, replays are required is scouting your opponent, kind of feel out what they have a tendency to bring. Now, that doesn't necessarily dictate what team you're going to bring, or at least it shouldn't. But the point is that I felt safe bringing this because it's good into a lot of the metagame. With the exception of it does struggle quite a bit versus Calyrex Ice and Kyogre for reasons that I hope are obvious by just looking at the team. So, I mean, if he does bring one or both, that's definitely going to be tricky to play around. I mean, God forbid he brings both. That would just be horrifying, to say the least. I did tweak Ho-Oh a bit. I was testing this team out on ladder a little bit, and I decided, Ho-Oh is such a... It provides a lot of stability for these bulky offense kind of teams, and when you get in the mirror matchup with, bulky offense dittos, you're going to have Ho-Oh staying in on each other a lot of the time because, you don't want to switch much into Sacred Fire plus Brave Bird, be it because of the burn or just because Ho-Oh is quite strong in its own right. So, even if you do switch out for that Regenerator, you're switching something else into that Brave Bird. So you're going to be staying in with your Ho on their Ho a lot of the time. And that can create some issues if you're, risking the speed tie, when it really comes down to it. So I did decide to put 4 EVs into the speed stat, just to be able to creep other Ho-Oh, because I found that, none of my test games really came down to like Ho-Oh mirrors. Is like, okay, whoever's Ho-Oh goes down first, they lose, right? But I was kind of just thinking ahead of like, okay, this could potentially be a problem depending on what he brings. So it's not going to hurt to put 4 EVs. It's not going to hurt to move 4 EVs from SpidF to speed. So that was kind of the thought process there. Aside from that, the team is the same. And I've gone in depth on it a lot more. I went far more in depth on it last week. So just get some water, and I will click on the Gen 9 Ubers tab. I spilled some. Unfortunate. Okay, so yeah, I think that's everything I've wanted to say. Yeah. So, we see the Kyogre. Yeah, pretty tough for the team, but it's not unmanageable. You know, I can beat it 1v1 with Thunderwave, Calm Mind, Kyogre. I can hope to play around it with, you know, Koraidon Sun, you know, pivoting Ho-Oh into Ice Beams, and then, like, you know, bringing out Koraidon on Surfs or whatever. So it does have counterplay, but again, Kyogre is really, really tough. And, you know, the more that I play with this team, the more I think, you know, maybe in the later rounds, if I make it there, I should, you know, bring a different team. Yeah, and I mean, Uber's seasonal is coming up as well, so I should definitely get some more teams I'm comfortable using in tournaments that aren't super weak to Calyrex Ice, because that is a very strong Pokemon in this meta. Funny enough, I think I saw it at like B+ on someone's viability rankings. I don't remember who. It might have been like the VR Council, but yeah, I mean, that thing is just insane in the right hands. But yeah, so based on what he brought in various other tournament matches, I'd seen him play Monotype, I'd seen him play UU, I'd seen him play RU. A lot of his teams seemed very offensive, so I was kind of planning around that. In my head, I was, you know, before the match, I was thinking like, okay, yeah, I was just going through some possible lead matchups, you know, like Grimmsnarl, Ribombee, Glamora, Koraidon. It's like, okay, I need, you know, I don't like doing this, but I need kind of a lead flow chart. It's like, okay, you know, I mean, because my team is optimized now to the point where, like, okay, you know, if he leads X, I do Y. And it especially helps, you know, with having a lot of experience in the tier, you know, not just like winging the lead matchup. Great custom avatar, by the way. I mean, I don't know how I feel about the Thundurus's pose, but it looks nice. I don't know. Thundurus having its back to the viewer, I don't know. It seems kind of wrong. I don't have the right word for it, but it doesn't look as menacing as, you know, Thundurus Therian should. So that's my thoughts on that avatar. But I like it overall. Also, I just noticed the guy's like adjusting his gloves. I don't know what to do with that information, but I just noticed that, and I had to say it out loud, of course. I couldn't just internalize the thought. But yeah, so just taking a look at the matchup, my Kyogre looks pretty good here. Being able to hit the field and use a lot of Thunder Wave, use a lot of Surf and or Ice Beam, really good for threatening out things like Koraidon, you know, things like Arceus. You know, he's really got to play around that T-Wave. So yeah, Kyogre is going to be really useful here. It's mostly for its offensive utility, but it is bolstered by its defensive capabilities. So, you know, I can really leverage that here against a lot of his team. Arceus seemed like a good win con to play too. If I could get to +2 with Koraidon down, then I would be in amazing shape. I couldn't quite get a read on what that Arceus form was on preview. You know, I figured it would be DD, but I mean, yeah, that's kind of what I played around. I think I calced it and saw that I think it was +2 Adamant Earthquake never KO'd Kyogre, which was amazing information for me. I was, thrilled when I saw that. So, that's really good. Again, Kyogre just leveraging that bulk against these kinds of teams. Really interesting how Kyogre has taken on more of a bulky, not pivot, but it's just taken a more bulky. It's taken on a bulkier set in this generation, and I think that's very interesting. Not that it doesn't make good use of its bulk in previous gens. Obviously, 140 SPDF is nothing to sneeze at, but let me just respond to this text. Yeah, so the duo of Arceus and Kyogre looking really good into his team. As well as Landorus just generally being useful. I also couldn't quite make out what the Eternatus... What does that mean? I couldn't quite make out what the Eternatus set was either. I did have a bit of trouble on Team Preview just trying to feel out what he could be. But I didn't feel like it made a ton of difference because I didn't think it would be Agility Meteor Beam because that's typically seen on, Screen's offense or even, Webb's offense likes running Meteor Beam Eternatus some of the time, which I think is really cool. But I mean, the very likely case of him not being Meteor Beam meant Ho-Oh was really good. Landorus could be used in a pinch. It is physically defensive, but meaning that it doesn't switch into Dynamax Cannon, but it can check Eternatus if it really comes down to it. So yeah, that's kind of the idea here. And obviously, Miraidon and Koraidon are busted and should be banned, effective immediately. I think that's everything I wanted to say. Yeah, okay, so I'm just going to get into it. Arceus, Kyogre. So, I led Kyogre just because I didn't want Koraidon to lead for free. Because, if it was, it could have been, scale shot for all I knew. And I didn't want to have to bring in, Landorus on an SD or Kyogre and then, play games with that. I also thought Ting-Lu could be a possible lead here because, if I ever led Koraidon, then Kyogre was a pretty easy switch. So I feel like Ting-Lu was also a flexible option. In general, Kyogre just covered a lot of my bases. The only real issue is that if he led Miraidon, I'd have to go into Arceus Ground, and that could lose me some momentum and swing the game state in his favor quite a bit. But this isn't, by any means the worst outcome. I guess best case scenario, he led Koraidon, and then you turned into, anything not named Kyogre. But, I mean, this is perfectly fine, too. So, I do reveal that I'm not Choice Scarf Kyogre, based on the fact that his Arceus got sent out before my Kyogre did. So, that information was revealed. So, I go for a Thunder Wave, I believe. No, I go for an Ice Beam. Right. Because my thought process here was, Miraidon and Koraidon are obviously really threatening to my team. Even Arceus is. Right? I have a lot to... this turn 1 would decide a lot. So, I was going back and forth between, Surf, Ice Beam, T-Wave. So it kind of led me down a decision tree, right? If I Surf and Koraidon comes in, I lose a lot of ground. Again, he just gets to U-turn out for free. Even if I bring in the Landorus, right, I'm still, losing a lot of footing. If I T-Wave and, he stays in or Miraidon comes in, then that's really bad for me. Especially if he's, Adamant Earthquake, which I figured he was. Then that would be really bad. Even thudding into Ting Lu wasn't great because Surf would not be much use when it has leftovers, and I would just let it set up spikes. The nice thing about this team is that it's not terribly weak to Hazard, so the Hazard stack idea doesn't work super well against me, but even giving myself the opportunity to, giving him the opportunity to even click Ruination on a switch, right? Even if I switch to Ho-Oh, right, that Ruination is really going to force some progress. But I decided I shouldn't overthink it, and I just click Ice Beam as a mid-ground because it's, I decided it was better to get a little bit of damage on something early on than just try and go all in with a Thunder Wave, turn 1, and risk it, like I didn't want to go for the high risk, high reward play turn 1. So I Ice Beamed there. Thunder Wave because I figured it could be Choice Scarf or Choice Specs, and I do get the full paralysis. Definitely lucky, but believe me, this is just the start of the terrible RNG. So I switched to Koraidon because I believe I was expecting him to switch into something else. I might have also... I don't remember why I made this play super well. I got done with my match a couple hours ago, so the memories are a little foggy. Yeah, I guess it was just better for me to, just comp any damage on Koraidon, because Ice Beam never killed, unless he was Specs, and Low Kick was really gonna poke some holes into his team. Even if he went Eternatus, I wasn't super worried. So he goes for the Thunder and hits it in Sun. No paralysis. Very good for me. Very lucky for me. Just keep that in mind. Yeah, so Arceus Ground, I go for U-turn just to stay ahead of the Eternatus or the Scarf Koraidon, because I don't like playing those speed ties, and I wanted to... obviously staying in would be a bad play. And something to note is that Low Kick never killed Kyogre, but if he stayed in on me, then I could U-turn and put him in range of Low Kick later on. I think I calced for max HP. I don't remember how many defense EVs I calced for. It was just a standard bulky Kyogre set that's typically used to check Koraidon. Yeah. So U-turn into my own Kyogre. Again, really leveraging that bulk to push my advantage against a team like this. And I see... Oh, something else to note. Yeah, so I guess the more apparent piece of information was that U-turn only did 16, indicating that this Arceus is very bulky. So I could... I ran the numbers, and this almost certainly was fully physically defensive Arceus. So I could kind of make out that it would be a Calm Mind set, which, not what I was expecting. So, yeah, that's something I had to keep in mind. Koraidon's Low Kick was no longer as threatening to this team, but still a good tool for making progress and playing to that Arceus ground end game. Which itself was made harder because from this range, I don't believe a +1 Earthquake to a KO'd. let's hit the calc for that one. Arceus ground. Let's see, 160 careful. To Arceus ground, calm mind. Yeah. Okay. Right, I remember this. Yeah, it was not my favorite all to 2-hit KO. If I was +1, then I had to get +1 in the first place, so better to just, you know, it was better to keep Arceus in my back pocket. You know, and it's also good, you know, to keep it healthy so I can potentially switch into Miraidon, which will prove to be very useful, right? Because Miraidon is broken. So I go back into Kyogre, and this puts him in the same position as before. I was struggling a bit to figure out what play I should go for here, because, you know, his team does have a lot of ways of dealing with Kyogre, namely his own Kyogre and Eternatus. But fortunately, his Kyogre doesn't have leftovers, so I do just go for the Surf, right? Yeah. And so now I believe Koraidon's low kick was a very favorable roll to KO standard Kyogre from this range, so that was really nice. But once again, I have to contend with actually switching into Kyogre, and I choose to go into Miraidon because, you know, he sees, you know, at this point I figured that he would catch on to the fact that his Kyogre is pretty difficult for me to switch into. You know, given the fact that Koraidon was my first response to it. So I figured he'd Ice Beam here, and instead of taking all that damage on Koraidon and potentially being put into range of being killed by a layer of spikes, I go Miraidon and leverage its incredible special bulk to only take 51 from Ice Beam. No freeze, very good for me. And now I'm in a great position to drop a Draco Meteor, and, you know, anyone remotely familiar with the tier will understand how scary Miraidon can be to switch into. So Tinglu comes out, Draco Meteor chunking it for a nice 40. I believe that is a pretty good roll on Tinglu. I forget exactly what that roll is, and for my own sake, I'm going to calc that. Right on pivot, Tinglu. Yeah, okay, so 40 is a pretty good roll. Right, and he reveals no leftovers, so this is Boots Tinglu, a set I'm not a huge fan of, especially when your Arceus is fully physically defensive. So, not a huge fan of the heavy-duty boots idea there. But yeah. Yep, Miraidon, of course, Dracoing into its counter, and then U-turning out, so the real winner is the Miraidon user. So back into Koraidon, and then I am just, you know, printing progress at this point. He does throw off a Ruination, great play by him, because it covers anything I switch into. You know, especially if I try to go, you know, Landorus on Earthquake, for example, I'd get punished for that quite hard. Yeah, I'm really just trying to make progress early game with Koraidon and just, you know, whittle him down for this Arceus ground. And I do have to be kind of aggressive about it, because aggressive in the sense that I have to make some predictions, which I'm not a huge fan of, but, you know, it was necessary, and as such, I didn't have much of a choice. So he goes into his Arceus ground. Low kick does 41%. I actually do want to see this. Calm mind. No. Calm mind. There we go. To full Fizz Def. Yeah, 41. About a mid roll. But I didn't want to risk any shenanigans with, missing a roll and potentially getting ice beamed. I think I was even dead to, I was dead to judgment from this range. So definitely didn't want to risk it. Him clicking recover would be pretty bad for me here, but I didn't have much of a choice anyway. So I go into my own Arceus ground because I decide, for whatever he does, I can counter him. He goes into Kyogre, I can Terra Ground Earthquake if I want to. I can Dragon Dance if he stays in or goes to, no. Yeah. I can Dragon Dance if he tries to stay the course. I had a lot of options with Arceus. Yeah, he brings in his Eternatus, and I don't remember what I do here. He goes into Koraidon, and I do set up a Dragon Dance. Okay. This play is... I don't feel amazing about this play, just because, Koraidon was a pretty obvious switch. This guy is not dumb. He's a good player. He's not going to let his Eternatus go for free. But I guess my idea was, if Kyogre or Ting-Lu comes in, they're going to die to +1 Earthquake. Something to note is that I can't even outrun, and I realized this in the battle, so that was a lot worse for me, but I did... Yeah, I did realize that even at +2 speed, I didn't outspeed Scarf Koraidon, which can be pretty huge in offense matchups. But either way, I wasn't going to stay in because unfortunately I cannot change my EVs mid-battle. So I switch into... Oh, I don't switch. Oh, right. I make this play. I recover because I look at the Sun turns and I see that he only has 1 turn left. So if I recover, then his next low kick is going to do, 40%. And then he low kick crits me. Yeah, really unfortunate. And now was when I realized, that I do not outrun him at... Well, no, I don't remember when I realized this, but this is when it really starts to matter. He crits the low kick and really just starts to put me in a bit of a bind. So my Arceus is about as good as dead. So, that low kick crit really doing me in. I would have liked to, be able to recover on Arceus or Ting-Lu, for example, or, hell, Kyogre, if I could put the sun up. But no such luck. Shit happens. I gotta, if I'm gonna be a good Mons player, I gotta learn to deal with it. Sometimes you just gotta accept that you're gonna get haxed. Not that just one crit is hacks, but you'll see what I mean. But yeah, I go into Landorus, he low kicks, Rocky Helmet, and then I U-turn out. And now he's in range of Koraidon low kick, and it just looks really good in general. Now you can see he's running out of ways to switch into it. Even Kyogre isn't a safe bet. Yeah, so it does 41. I do remember being a little confused about that. I don't remember exactly what I was calculating. I might have been calculating offensive, or I might not have counted for rain. But it didn't really matter because he put up rain and he was in range of another low kick, so that's all that really mattered at that point. So I low kick the Eternatus, get some chip damage, potentially useful for Arceus's Earthquake if I can find an opportunity to recover, or even Landorus's Earthquake. Deceptively strong in Ubers, even with a physically defensive spread. Speaking of Landorus, I go into mine because I guess I spoiled that already. But yeah, I kind of just decide, if anything is getting toxic, Landorus, it's going to be Landorus. But I eat a Dynamax Cannon, and now I am dead to Stealth Rock. I don't remember exactly what the HP was, but even if I would have lived Stealth Rock on 1 HP, it's not like I can come in on any sort of attack. I guess I can come in to intimidate the Koraidon if I would live Stealth Rock, but yeah, that crit is really annoying for me. So I let the Landorus go down because I figure it would be dumb to try and preserve this. I figured I would just reset the tempo. Try and get something going here. So I go back into Miraidon because, again, Ting-Lu is not going to take a Draco Meteor plus U-turn. Arceus and Kyogre are in range. Eternatus is weak. His Bikes are Dragon type. The only thing that I had to play around was Terra, and you might notice that something's going to be a little off about my plays from here, and a lot of it was because I was trying to play around Terra, and the Terra that gets used actually does end up being very impactful to how this game ends, because the ending to this game is very exciting, to say the least. But yeah, so I go into Miraidon, and what do I do here? I Terra Fairy, and I Draco Meteor. Right. I remember being in desperation here because I didn't want it, because I recognized that, okay, if he Terra Fairies and Dynamax cannons my Miraidon, I probably lose. Especially since Terra Fairy Miraidon is good in its own right here. Very much a Terra candidate from the start, just looking at his team. But he does make the solid play of going Kyogre. It just, those two crits kind of put me in a spot where I had to make the desperation play because I'm like, okay, you can do whatever you want, but under no circumstances are you killing my Miraidon. Unless he reads the Terra and Sludge Bombs, in which case I'll give it up. That probably would have just lost the game for me on the spot. But fortunately that didn't happen, so I'm just going to get some more water here. My water is a very weird temperature, and I'm not a big ice cold water guy, but I don't know, it's a weird temperature. Yeah. Okay. So, back to what I was doing. Yeah, Kyogre goes down, and he brings in Koraidon. Great move, because that really just puts the pressure on me. Staying in on Flare Blitz would be a choke. Switching to Ho risks Outrage. So, yeah, really good play from my opponent here, just putting on the pressure, really trying to close that window for me to get back in this game. Really just trying to choke this team out. But I go back into Kyogre, and he stays ahead of it and U-turns because he recognizes that it's a choke for me to stay in, and if he goes to Ho-Oh, then Koraidon's not being it anyway, so he can U-turn and then play it from there. So Miraidon comes in, and I go into Arceus on the Electro Drift, and This is meant to be a sack. However, he misses Draco Meteor, which definitely makes up for the 2 crits he got on me. I recover on that, and I was just over the moon when I saw that Draco land to the left. Well, when I saw the Draco land to his left. Let me just relive this. Yeah. So that got me back in the game. I figured it's like, okay, recover on Draco Meteor miss. It's one of those things, you think of it, it's like, okay, he could miss Draco Meteor, so recover is my best play, so I'll make it. And if he hits Draco Meteor, it is what it is. At this point in the game, I'm really feeling like I'm going to lose SV. And when you lose SV in Homefield, you're in a bad spot. But he misses, and all of a sudden, I am back in the game. So, I wouldn't say it's super even, but you know what? We'll call it even for now. And by for now, I mean he gets a max roll on the next Draco Meteor. And he says epic after he misses the first one. Like, dude, you just double crit me, and then you get the max roll anyway. I mean, I'll show this calc. I will show this calc. 128, 120. 128, 120. 58.3, and he did 60. I don't know what's up with that. I guess he just got better than the max roll. I remember in the moment. It was I looked at the chat and it showed 59.1. I guess there was just some discrepancy from what I was calcing compared to what I actually did in the team builder. But either way, very, very good fortune. So him missing the Draco didn't matter because he just got the max roll anyway. So back to uneven. So yeah, not having the Arceus is going to make this very tough because I just lost my win con. So now I have to win without a win con. So I am going to have to spend the next few turns trying to put myself in a fantastic position. And so that starts with me going into Koraidon because I'm Choice Scarf, and I force him to switch into Eternatus, and I believe I U-turn here. A U-turn, yep, staying ahead of that, and I go into Kyogre because I figure my best play is to try and limit the Eternatus's potential to switch in. And again, I was also just playing around Terra a lot. It's like, okay, I can go Miraidon, but, that obviously draws out his potential Terra Fairy. I don't know if Eternatus prefers Terra Fairy these days, but I know it can very feasibly fit it onto its set. And so I figure Kyogre is the safer play that won't immediately lose me the game if he made the right team building choice. So he puts up Toxic Spikes. Not the best use of his turn, in my opinion. Yeah, when I have what is very clearly a Boots Kyogre, Boots Ho-Oh, and Boots Miraidon, and I have a Koraidon, yeah, put up T-Spikes. Yeah, they were very inconsequential. I'll just give that away now. So yeah, Ice Beam, and then I Thunder Wave in case he tries to recover. Just because, I don't want him to beat me 1v1, because him having his Eternatus gone means that I have a slightly higher chance at winning with something like my own Koraidon. So I Ice Beam, down goes the Eternatus, and now it is a 4-on-4. However, I did not pause. It's a 4-on-4, however, he has Terra, so it's a 4-on-6, basically. Not to mention, the Kyogre and Miraidon are rather battered and bruised, so looking rough for me. But I am slowly getting back into this, and I'm just going to have to hope it's enough. So I go into Ho-Oh on the Outrage, as he crits my Ho-Oh. At this point, my tournament life is flashing before my eyes, you know? I can already see it. It's like, damn, I lost round 2. This is so sad. So I just got really distracted by something. What else is new? But yeah, so Outrage crit. Very unfortunate. I do wonder. I never bothered to calc the damage because it didn't matter, but in hindsight, I want to know, like, what does that mean for him? Was that just Scarf Jolly? Oh, okay, so he max roll crit me. Okay, so I just wasn't familiar with his game. He just gets max rolls and crits. I understand now. Honestly, it's probably for the better that I didn't calc it in the moment, because that probably would have just, tipped me off. And I don't say anything in chat about the hacks, but, in real life, I was rather annoyed at that. But yeah, so I go back into Kyogre, try and get some regen, and I think no, Kyogre wasn't the play. No, yeah, Kyogre wasn't the play because yeah, I know he's Scarf, so I can go into my Miraidon, and just make him switch. He's got to switch into something, and he can't switch and Terra. Something I've learned is that, like, you can play the best player in the world, and there's only so much they can do in one turn. My opponent would not be able to switch and Terra at the same time. So I could have taken advantage of that. So Kyogre, not my best play. This was not right. I should have recognized that I would have forced him into the situation where he has to essentially give something up to Miraidon. He has to sacrifice a lamb to the slaughter if I bring in Miraidon. So I just wasn't thinking about that, and that's definitely something I should improve on, just really forcing conditions that I can guarantee. So yeah, Outrage, and of course he doesn't get the 2-turn Outrage, so he doesn't play games with Confusion. Because, if Koraidon hits itself in Confusion, you give your opponent a free turn, and that's just really nice for them. So he does get the Outrage kill, and I still don't go into Miraidon. Oh my, what am I doing? I guess I was just kind of panicking. Ugh, that is not good. Not good at all. Bad. Boo, bad. But yeah, so barring another crit, I would have, let me see, in rain. Okay, yeah, crit would have killed me. That crit did like 35, right? 37 min. God, this mon is broken. But yeah, so I bring this back in. Yeah, no. If I went to Miraidon sooner, this wouldn't have been nearly as bad for me. But yeah, he brings in his Miraidon, and I go into my Miraidon, and now I'm just playing so risky for no reason. Very much not my style. Yeah, that sequence of turns was not clean at all. I wasn't even playing around Terra. I was just playing poorly, so definitely something I need to brush up on. I should have just capitalized on the fact that he was Scarf. Instead of overthinking it and trying to use the defensive utility of Ho-Oh and Kyogre. Yeah, that ended up being a very poor decision for me. So I Draco, and then U-turn on the Koraidon. Funny enough, so now I get to bring in my Ho-Oh at about 80%, and barring any more max roll crits, let's see. I could have lived crit, but barring any crits, this would have been good for me. So he goes into his Miraidon as I Sacred Fire, and then, I decide, like, okay, I'm out of resources to switch into Miraidon. Koraidon dies to Electro Drift. Miraidon dies. Everything dies to Electro Drift because Miraidon is broken. And all I can think to myself is, like, this situation wouldn't be nearly as bad if I just switched to Miraidon sooner. That really stings that I didn't switch to Miraidon sooner. Oh my god. But yeah, he takes me down, and then I go into my Koraidon because I know I'm faster than this. And at this point, it's like, this was like a big turning point for the battle, because it's like, okay, I'm out of options. Either he has a Terra Fairy or he doesn't. I have no control over it, So, and I have no way to play around it reliably, so I'm just going to go to Koraidon, Outrage kills everything, and I'm just going to hope that I can make something work. So I click Outrage, and I'll just let this play. Tinglu goes down. Arceus, not a switch in. And he Terra Poisons. He Terra Poisons his Arceus. I don't get that at all. I don't understand that one bit. What was he cooking with that? I mean, even if you stalled out one more turn of Sun, Outrage wouldn't have killed Arceus. I calced it. It did like 38 min. So, yeah. Just, I don't get it. But he gives me the Terra, and then I realize, oh my god, I can win this. I need some speed ties to go my way, but I can win this. Sun doesn't matter. Well, I mean, it didn't matter. I would have KO'd everything anyway. I win the speed tie, and break through Confusion, and down goes the Koraidon. And if I break through Confusion here, I win. If not, I'm forced into a speed tie, one of my least favorite things in Pokemon. And I hit myself in Confusion, and my heart just drops. So the entirety of this game is now hinging on a 50-50. A true 50-50. A lot of people say things are 50-50s in Pokemon matches. Very rarely is that true. But here, this is the purest form of a 50-50. I send in my Miraidon. If he Electro Drifts first, he wins. If I Draco Meteor first and I hit, I win. I Draco Meteor and it lands, and down goes the Miraidon. I was just over the moon. You know, I think that's the second time this video I've used that expression, but I was just so filled with joy and goodwill. I was a jolly good fellow, as some might say. I didn't play super cleanly, but I played to my outs most of the time, and I did everything I could most of the time to get back into this game. My, you know, some inconsistency in my plays. I'm gonna beat myself up about not going to Maridon sooner for weeks, but I did it. And I think winning after getting, crit, max roll crit, I think that merits some credit. So yeah, that was game one. Very long for such a fast-paced, hyper-offensive meta. So game two, I take him to Gen 8. And I guess I should have shown my team first. It's a sample. Now, back when Gen 8 was current, I was pretty damn good at Ubers. And I played it a lot, and I enjoy the meta. A lot of people don't like it because, anyone who is familiar with the tier knows about the big three, Yveltal, Duskman, Necrozma, and Eternatus, in that order. And, with the presence of Shadow Calyrex in the tier, a lot of people don't like it. Which, I think is fair. The tier is not for everyone. But I quite like it. And I played it a lot, and I know a lot about the tier. So, with all of that being said, and the with the idea in mind that I enjoy team building a lot and making my own teams, it seems kind of weird that I would use a sample, right? But I used a sample because for as much as I will praise Gen 8 Ubers for being a great meta, a lot of team building is fairly linear. You're going to have the big three on your team, or else you are suboptimal. And then, the last three, it's generally a pretty predictable shell for the last three. You can run Calyrex, Xerneas, Groudon, Ferrothorn, Kyogre, Clefable is a common trio. But this team I really enjoy. I love Ferrothorn in Ubers. I like this Kyogre set because you really start poking holes into the big three. Weavile's really cool in my opinion, so this just has a lot of things I like in Ubers. The only anti-synergy is, of course, Moonlight in Rain, but that's kind of hard to avoid because what are you going to do? Not run Recovery on defensive NDM, right? And worth noting, NDM is always specially defensive because it is the premier Xerneas check in the tier. So, yeah, Haban, Eternatus, kind of cool in my opinion. I was going to do some tweaking with the team before our set, but I just didn't really have the time to do that. And then pretty standard Yveltal set. I was debating Foul Play over Knockoff, but I like Knockoff better. When you have this hazard stack idea with NDM and then Ferrothorn. I really like Knockoff for being able to stifle any attempts at just muscling past that and winning before hazards can wear you down. Yeah, so I load into Aerodactyl lead, because as cool as Dragon Dance Aerodactyl is in Gen 8 NU, it has no place in Gen 8 Ubers. So Aerodactyl is the fastest Mon in Gen 8 that has Stealth Rock because Deoxys is not in the game. And you run Sash with Stealth Rock, Taunt, Rock Tomb. Forget what else people run. Like Dual Wing Beat? No, Dual Wing Beat doesn't sound right. I don't quite remember. But yeah, that's the idea behind Aero Lead. No Eternatus on this team. So my own Kyogre is looking good. And yeah, his Weavile does seem pretty threatening to me, so I'm going to have to be careful about that. So that is the general idea behind this preview. I didn't quite know what his Yveltal set would be on this team, or his NDM. Well, no, I thought his NDM would be defensive, which does end up putting me in a pickle, as you'll see. But ironically, SV Ubers, it's known for its screaming fast offense. But that took 40 turns. This game was very fast. I don't even think it hit 20 turns. It helped that he has a very offensive team. But, Gen 8 Ubers is known for being... Gen 8 in general is known for having a lot of bulk in its tiers, OU or otherwise. UU also has a lot of bulky options you can run. Yeah, that's all I think I have to say. So let's see. Ferrothorn into Aerodactyl. I did calc and body press. It was like 20% chance to 2-hit KO. But, the most Aerodactyl is going to do is taunt me and get, rocks up. I didn't really care about anything else it was going to do to me. If it went to Earthquake, fine. Right? But it's just like, okay, whether I kill you in 2 turns or 3, I don't really, it doesn't really matter to me. So he taunts me, which I guess is fair. You don't want me setting up spikes because, such an offensive team like this probably isn't packing Defog Yveltal, and setting up an Iron Defense would put him in a pretty bad spot. So, yeah, Taunt is a fine play there. I do end up critting the body press, which turns the 20% 2-hit KO into a 100% 2-hit KO. Nothing too crazy, but that definitely helps the odds. So down goes the Aerodactyl, and I have a taunted Ferrothorn in on him. So in comes the Yveltal. I figured this could have been a few different things, but I was expecting, typical knockoff Sucker Punch set. But as I switch into Weavile, he reveals to be Life Orb. Yeah, he knocks off my boots, which does become very important later on. Yeah. And, yeah, okay, Life Orb. Very, not unorthodox, because I think Life Orb is a fine set, but definitely not Yveltal's most common item. It's boots, come on, right? But just to deny Sucker Punch, I click Ice Shard here as he goes into Weavile, and then I go into my Weavile counter, because, obviously. He makes a great move and goes for knockoff because, whatever I do, knockoff is going to punish it. Even if I go into Kyogre, losing that healing or losing those boots is going to be really good for, his pretty much all of his teammates. So triple axle, he hits 1, he hits 2, and he doesn't hit the third. It is a 72% chance to hit all 3 triple axles, so it's nothing too insane, but, you know, that is definitely unfortunate. So 8, 13, was that? Yeah, the third hit is twice as strong as the second, right? I think that's how it goes. Yeah, it's 20 base power, 40 base power, 80 base power. So 8, 13, 26, something like that. So probably it would have done 45 to me if he hit all 3. But yeah, so that in mind, I'm definitely out of triple axle range now, as he goes for a swords dance as I iron defense up, and he misses triple axle, which it doesn't really matter a ton because, you know, he would have just, you know, died to Rocky Helmet or to Iron Barbs anyway, but he does just go for knockoff, take his damage on the way out, and I put up a spike, which is really nice for breaking Calorex's focus sash, depending on how I position myself. Nice for chipping into Necrozma. Yeah, it's not the most useful spike in the world, but I felt like it was useful to get up. So Yveltal comes in, Oblivion Wings, and yeah, I respected the possibility of Oblivion Wing or Dark Pulse, but, you know, I didn't think trying to switch into it was the best use of my resources. Kyogre was just going to eat a knockoff afterward, you know. Having a 50% Ferrothorn wouldn't be of much use. Actually, no. Having Ferrothorn healthy would have been good. I should have seen that. I should have thought further ahead about that. Just how it would play out with an offensive team like this. So I body press, obviously chunking him for a lot, and I go down. And he only recovers net like 6%. So, and now I send in my Weavile because I am fucking stupid and forgot my boots were knocked off. So, not playing super well so far in this series. I'm not playing nearly as cleanly as I would have liked. The time of day also didn't help much either. You know, when I played this, not a super great time for me. But, you know, I'm not going to try and make excuses there, but I'm definitely not at my best here. Probably like 80% of my best. But yeah, I go Eternatus after I say oops. And he sucker punches me. It's like, okay, you know, I don't really care. Eat this Dynamax Cannon, die. I was thinking of recovering to stall his life orb, but he could have just clicked Oblivion Wing anyway, and I didn't want to play games with that. You know, even if I outplayed the sucker punch or whatever. I guess I would have only had to outplay 4, given pressure. But yeah, I go into Yveltal here because if he's Specs, then giving him +1 off Eternatus would be the end of that game. So I go into Yveltal. He reveals Nasty Plot, which is fine by me, because a +2 Calyrex is a +2 non-Specs Calyrex is not as powerful as a +1 Specs Calyrex. So he goes for Draining Kiss, a possibility I did respect, but I do have heavy, not super heavy, but a good amount of special defense investment on this Yveltal, so I was never super worried. So I knock off, as he does, put himself back into Sash, and I just say, you know what? You're not outplaying seven. You're not playing. You're not outplaying 8 sucker punches. Die. Kyogre comes in, and he gets the Quick Claw proc. Lucky, yes, but I should have switched out Yveltal anyway, because all of this, all of my criticisms of my play, revolve around what this Necrozma set is. So I go into my own Necrozma, knock off, and then I wear down the Kyogre. Oh, the game did go past turn 20. Okay. Thunder Paras, but I go for Sunsteel because it's actually more powerful than knockoff after Kyogre has lost its item. And now is when I play horribly. This could have been a 2-0. But you know what I do? I knock off on what I thought was a defensive NDM. On an Aerodactyl lead hyper offense with Yveltal holding a Life Orb. And then I give him +3. I can't Sucker Punch him anymore. He gets to +4. And I just have to hope I crit knockoff, and I don't. So down I go. I'll just skip that. Yeah, definitely not my best work. Really just not proud of how I played that. Yeah. So, you know, after how I played the Miraidon and how I played against this NDM, I'm right now, not even like me during this tournament match, but right now I'm just not pleased with myself at all. Not at all. I definitely could have done better. But as long as I grow from it, it's fine. It's just really annoying that I couldn't have played better. Because it was all just misplays, you know. Not going Miraidon sooner, you know, not playing around offensive NDM. It was all misplays. But yeah, so we go to game 3, and after everything that's happened, my tournament life is now on the line. You know, one of our tournament runs would end here. And if I didn't play to the best of my abilities now, none of what I've done will matter. You know? Sure, I played fine, but I don't really... I don't want to end on this note, you know? If I had played better, I would have been more okay with losing here. But I want a chance to really show what I can do in the later stages of the tournament. And if I win this DPP match, I can get there. So after the SS Ubers match, he messages me, says this. He leaves for about 15, 20 minutes, not 10 minutes, to get something. And, yeah, that entire time I'm just sat there thinking about how this could all end. This is it. If I, you know, my opponent has proven to be very good at the game. If I don't, you know, play at my absolute best, none of what I did to salvage this game will matter. And I'll have ended my tournament run at round 2. And so I sat and got myself in the right mindset. And when he came back, we loaded up Gen 4 Ubers. And I lead with... He leads Deoxys. And I know that he's Scarf, because I am Scarf Darkrai. So because he led first, I was almost 100% sure that he didn't have superpower. So I take advantage of that by clicking Dark Pulse. Wait, what? Oh. Okay. Well, disregard what I said about him being Scarf. I just forgot he was Sash and convinced myself that he was Scarf. Okay. But yeah, so I'm Scarf Darkrai. This actually ends up being better for me. Now, Sash can mean superpower, but yeah. He never clicked it, and because I was thinking, if he's Scarf, very low odds he has superpower, and if he's Sash, then I can just revenge kill him with something in the back. Also, this was the team I used. This is from this year's Ubers Premier League, which is currently ongoing as I record this. I like this team because it really does it does well into a lot of offense. Heatran is really nice for Latios, which would otherwise be very threatening to this team. So the Heatran is very nice touch, especially when paired with Groupon. 3 attacks, Latios, I really liked. This slot can be either Surf or Thunder, but I did like being better into Bronzong, so I figured Surf was just the overall better choice, just so I get stonewalled by Bronzong a little less. Not that Thunder doesn't do fine damage into Bronzong, but for the uninitiated, all Bronzong and DPP Ubers run full SPDF to deal with the Lottie Twins and Dialga and just be incredibly annoying in rain. And this Mewtwo set, Aerosphere, Will-O-Wisp, Taunt, Recover, I really like this set. And then Choice Scarf Dialga with Sleep Talk. Very cool. So yeah, a team that I really just clicked with. This was also the team I would have brought to round 1. So I was feeling very confident in this team. I'd messed around with some other teams in prep before this, but I didn't feel as solid with them. But this team was something I really did click with. So that's the general team breakdown. As he goes into, so he goes into his own Darkrai, and I reveal Leftovers, which is really good information for me. So I can reasonably infer that this is a Nasty Plot Darkrai, which you typically wouldn't bring out this early in the game, but it ended up working out for him because obviously I'm Scarf. So I go into Dialga because if he tries to put me to sleep, then I have Sleep Talk and I can just fire right back. But he makes a pretty good double into Deoxys, and despite being Scarf, Deoxys is insane and puts up rocks. So I Dragon Pulse and I see what his response is, and it is Groupon. Yet another Pokemon that runs... not always, because Groupon is a bit more flexible in what it can do for a team, but it... if you're running support Groupon, which I believe he is, and by that I mean I just don't remember too well, but no, I remember this. I remember this set. Yeah. It's Rock Polish. It's Rock Polish Groupon with Life Orb. Yeah. So Groupon, even if you don't invest into its special defense, it's definitely taking a Dragon Pulse, because Dragon Pulse isn't all too strong. So I switch into Latios, and he makes a great play to Dragon Claw. Catching the Latios on the switch, fantastic play, because he recognizes the structure and says, okay, Darkrai lead, this is definitely very offensive. Scarf Dialga, most likely paired with Latios, just because that's so good in terrain teams. And, yeah, so he Dragon Claws, down goes my Latios. Latios would have been really nice for me, if I caught him on that Earthquake. But, yeah, but I do reveal the Life Orb, which is very nice information to have. Something I wouldn't have had if he had just Earthquaked. And, yeah, so this definitely means Rock Polish. Sometimes you see Swords Dance, but I'm not a huge fan of that set. And then I go into Mewtwo, because Will-O-Wisp seems pretty good here. I can negate Darkrai's leftovers and put it in range of things like, Dialga Dragon Pulse. I can, I have a lot of options after I Will-O-Wisp. I can Aura Sphere if I really want to. But he goes Wobbuffet as I Will-O-Wisp, and then I taunt the Wobbuffet, trying to trap me. Yeah. Not gonna happen. And then, so as to not get Mirror Coated, and to potentially catch anything else on a switch, I just start spamming Will-O-Wisp. And for the uninitiated, taunt in DPP lasts 3 to 6 turns, I believe. Yeah, I think it's 2 to 6 turns in ADV, and then 3 to 6 turns in DPP. And if you think that's dumb, just look at Encore. Yeah, so Wobbuffet not doing anything. It's going to lose its interaction. He goes into Darkrai, and I catch it with a Will-O-Wisp. It is nice for him not to have to switch into Aura Sphere, because I was never going to click that on Wobbuffet. Although I suppose I could have, because, he was taunted, so he could never Encore me. So I very well could have Aura Sphered, because that would have also helped against Groupon, which does end up posing a bit of a threat later on. But yeah, I go into my Dialga just to Sleep Fodder it. No. Okay, yeah, he doesn't click Dark Void, but he does click Dark Pulse, and so now he's locked in, and I just click Draco Meteor because it 2KOs Wobbuffet. Yeah, especially after that burn. So barring any misses, there we go. I don't know what he could have clicked. Destiny Bond isn't a very common choice on leftover sets, but yeah, either way, that was fairly riskless. Now, Groupon was definitely an issue here. I wanted to keep around Dialga because it was a Scarfer. It was my only Scarfer that beat Darkrai. So I had to keep this around. It was also good sleep fodder. So I went into my own Groupon, which is a support set. So it is specially defensive. And that does end up making quite a difference because Earthquake really rips into me. So yeah. Now his Earthquake is looking really threatening, and I'm not sure what to do about it. Oh wait, I can crit him. Okay, so if I didn't crit, let's see. If I didn't crit, I do another 29. Let's actually hit the calc on this one. DPP, Groupon, support, Groupon, Rock Polish, Earthquake. Yeesh. Okay, yeah, so he did have quite a bit of bulk in there. But yeah, so he would be, 20 maybe, 10%. So that gives me two lines. Either I can go into Mewtwo after this to stall out Life Orb recoil because I am max HP, which Mewtwo typically likes to run for support sets, which are great on it. That's part of why Mewtwo is so great, is because it has such a diverse pool of sets that it can choose from, a lot of which are amazing. So I would have lived a I would have lived a EQ. It's like, okay, yeah. Let's see, I would have lived one, barring crit, but more importantly, I also had Scarf Darkrai, and because of how much this Groupon took from my Earthquake, I could conclude that he was very bulky, and I could definitely tell he was max attack, so he didn't have enough speed to outrun my Scarf Darkrai, which hits 574, I think. Don't quote me on that. I haven't been playing the tier for that long. But yeah, that definitely makes my life a lot easier because now it's harder for him to revenge me. Yeah, because I get to respond to him now, which is really good. I did think this was Mewtwo and Scizor in the back because I know there's a team with Wobbuffet and Scizor. But I also know there's a team with Wobbuffet and Rayquaza. Yeah. Yeah, no. This is a sample team. I just didn't recognize it at the time because I thought it would be Scizor Mewtwo in the back, but it's actually Mewtwo Rayquaza. So, yeah, keeping this Darkrai around is especially good because I don't get instantly mollywopped by this Mewtwo. And so he takes Life Orb recoil, and that puts him well within range of Darkrai. Or no, I think if he was max HP, it did like 91 max. But either way, he would most likely die to the Life Orb recoil. So Darkrai seemed like a fine play. And then I could just come in with Dialga and win from there. Even if he killed me, which I guess he needed a crit to kill my Darkrai. So, yeah, I go into my Dialga and sleep fodder it. Yeah, I mean there were a few lines that would have won me this game, but yeah, I just go for the Sleep Top Dialga angle. And there is a mechanic in DPP where you can only click Sleep Talk once if you're choice locked. So that does limit my options a bit. And this Rayquaza is definitely scary for the team. And yeah, so now it's click Dragon Dance. And I stay in because max HP Mewtwo doesn't. Oh, no. Right, because if he clicked... Right, because I couldn't switch into Outrage plus Earthquake. So Heatran was never super safe. But I saw that he was Life Orb, so I'm like, okay, I can go Heatran and Will-O-Wisp. Now this Rayquaza is out of commission. Assuming I do hit, which I do. Really nice for me. And, yeah, so... Another Outrage never killed me. And then I just protect. And I think he does... No, yeah. He Earthquakes. And then... Yeah, he... forfeits, because what the hell is Mewtwo going to do to Scarf Darkrai? And yeah, I do win. I say sorry for the luck, and I even apologized for that in forums for Game 3, but, I mean, honestly, the luck here hardly mattered, because I would say I played at my best here in DPP. Did a little bit worse in Gen 9, did pretty poorly in Gen 8. Mainly just because I just threw away any shot at beating offensive NDM. But I did end up taking the set 2-1. So I am thrilled about that. I'm moving on to round 3. Yeah, this tournament started with 88 people, and we are down to, I believe, 24. I think I counted before starting this recording. But yeah, I think that is all I have to say. GG's to my opponent. I mean, very well played from him. Definitely got lucky. Would not have been that close if he didn't get so lucky. Not that he didn't deserve the Gen 8 game. I mean, that 100% deserved. But I persevered in this one. Made it a little bit harder on myself than I needed to be. Then I guess I just locked in, as the kids would say, for DPP. So, yeah. I'm not going to say I played super cleanly, but I think I did deserve the win there. Yeah, the thing about SV is, like, if you lose SV, you're in a really bad spot, because then you got to win 2 in a row. And yeah, so it's good that I'm very good at SV Ubers. So yeah, that's about all I have, and I will be back at another time. I hate YouTube outros.